Good morning and welcome to the Senior Hour, which is sponsored by Santa Clarita In-Home Care and Advanced Audiology. I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host, Dr. Jean Dorio, who's running a wee bit late, but he will be here, on your hometown station AM 1220 KHTS. This is a show for, about, and by seniors, giving information to enhance one's quality of life. Speaking of quality of life again.
Good morning.
Our illustrious guest,
I love
absolutely, Dr. Thomas Palakti.
It's good to be here. Thank
Doctor
you.
of Chiropractic.
Yeah, among other things, sure.
Among other things, nutrition and exercise and all kinds of good stuff.
Yes, all good stuff.
Yes. And what are we going to be talking about today?
Well, it's a shameless plug.
A shameless plug?
Yes.
What kind of plug is
that?
that?
Well, I didn't get to do my show that's on KHTS Mondays at 11.
Why?
Martin Luther King Day.
That's right.
So the studio was shut down.
No wonder I couldn't get anybody here.
There you go. And
Yes.
So this Saturday at Valencia Wellness Center, 25050 Peachland, I'm giving a 1-hour seminar on the 10 easy steps to high energy health. Now, this is all of the secrets that I gained. Let me just put this into perspective. 16 years ago, I was in a major life transition. I went from being in practice to being a teacher to being totally disenchanted with the entire educational process when it comes to the healthcare sciences, to coming out to California and restarting, having to go back to school in order to get my California license. In that process, I put on nearly 30 pounds of fat.
Whoa.
Yeah, commuting through the worst rush hour traffic in both directions every single day for a couple of years and going through, having to repeat school in order to get a California license. Probably one of the most stressful times in my life. Oh, by the way, we decided to get married, buy a new house, and start a new business all during that period as well. So it's just a perfect formula for getting out of control and being overwhelmed with stress.
And that was stress enough.
Sure. Now that's one thing. So that process was over the course of a couple of years, but so I packed on some really unhealthy weight during that time.
I can't imagine you being heavy.
Yeah, it was pretty gross. I got pictures to prove it. It's not like I'm making this up to try to make my story more better. It's for real. I lived it firsthand, and I really started to appreciate the challenges that people have when they get into that kind of trouble. Metabolic imbalance, the hormonal imbalance, the metabolic imbalance, the toxicity, the no energy, the compromised immune system, the aches and pains, the loss of motivation, because when you feel like that, you really don't want to do much of anything. So I get it. I understand it firsthand. And on this Saturday at the Valencia Wellness Center from 1 to 2, I'm going to be sharing my top 10 secrets of how I turned that all around, and in a very short period of time, less than a year, dropped 30 pounds of fat, have kept it off for the past 15 years, and have more energy and feel and actually look 10 to 15 years younger than I did 15 years ago.
Wow. Well, it's interesting. I've been rather under the weather the last couple of weeks myself. I'm beginning to pull out of it. But mine has been stress-related also.
Always
I went to 2 doctors last week, and one of them looked at me and she said, "You're under a lot of stress."
Yeah.
She said, "I can see it in your face."
Sure.
And even Russ has told me that. I said, I'm not. But when my mouth breaks out all over the place and I can't eat, which doesn't hurt me, because my one of the doctors said your BMI is too high.
Right.
Let's get it down.
Right. Sure. That's one of the main things. Fat, for most people, is insulation. It's insulation from some type of form of stress, whether it be a chemical stress, whether it be an emotional stress, whether it actually be a physical stress. Our bodies respond by conserving fat.
Well, that's true, because the chemotherapy I went through caused me to lose weight.
Sure.
But after I finished, I started putting it back on.
Right.
And it's been steadily going up.
And the problem is that
you need to lose 15 pounds.
Yeah, the problem is that it's the worst kind of weight. It's not it's not necessarily bad to put on weight, but it is bad to put on pure fat weight. And that's what I did when I was under that kind of stress. That 30 pounds was pure fat.
And I think that's what mine is.
Yeah, the worst kind. That's the worst kind of weight to carry.
I hide it very well.
But what about the connection between our emotions and our physical well-being?
Oh, sure.
Stress versus how our body does, and reflecting even on people looking at you, Barb, saying you're under stress.
I know.
Yeah.
And knowing that, and then it comes out in a medical way where you have to seek help.
That's exactly
So that
what
connection
happened.
is
Absolutely.
there, but up until 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago in traditional medicine, they weren't making that connection.
No.
It was never there.
No, even in the alternative health sciences, each one of the alternative health sciences has their own thing. Mm-hmm. Like in chiropractic, it's the energy in the nerve system, which for many conventional medical doctors is a little too ethereal, too unconventional, but they're starting to appreciate it more with all of the scientific validation of Chinese medicine, Oriental medicine. So that is not so far-fetched anymore. Mm-hmm. And now we're able to work side by side and look at some of the research, some of the brain research, some of the cutting-edge epigenetic research, and actually have access and work side by side with some of the world's foremost authorities and researchers on how this energy really is. There's two main controlling factors in the body. One is the nerve system, and the second is the endocrine system, and it's hard to detach the two. Mm-hmm. The chemical balances in your body have to be managed by the nerve system, and vice versa. There's feedback loops all throughout the entire body.
And think about this. The nervous system goes to the brain. That's Absolutely. A part of the whole system. And when you have impact psychologically, you're going to create some nervous problem that's going to go down
Absolutely.
And affect your body.
Absolutely.
So, but this has, the doctors these days, as you know, just don't have the time to settle down, talk with their patients, and figure some of this out, and ask them what are the stresses of your life that are affecting you right now. You can't hear that now, because when they have 15 minutes to see you, they're looking and focusing on something they can write a prescription for.
Sure.
Well, that's very true.
And that's actually pretty generous. I don't know that most doctors spend 15 minutes with their patients.
Well, I think it's probably 10 minutes and 5 minutes on the computer. I'm trying to rev it back up.
Yeah.
Well, the doctor I went to last week was doing both.
Mm-hmm. At the same time.
Yeah, at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And he recommended this, and he recommended that, and a gargle, and what have you. And he put me on steroids.
Does it make
to get rid of that stuff.
Does it make you feel better, though? This is probably a subtraction out of what we're talking about, but does it make you feel better or worse that the doctor is focusing on putting information into the computer, looking at his watch or her watch, and maybe not paying attention to what you're saying?
No, this doctor was paying attention to what I was saying.
Good.
Because he was recording what I was saying.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And because I asked him, I said, "What are you doing?" He said, I'm recording what you're telling me and what your symptoms are, so that I can better understand.
That's one of the things that I like about the progress that we've made in technology, as far as being able to, in real time, if I were physically responsible to paper chart the way that I used to have to do before there was, an iPad where you could just tap a button when somebody says something, you tap one button, tap another button, like what we do in our office.
Yes.
it would be so overwhelming now because of all the documentation requirements that are mandatory. I don't necessarily know that it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it is what it is. So you have to deal with it. And technology now has gotten to the point where I'd like it to get to the point where there is real-time recording, like video, audio, everything, so the doctor can just pay attention and think about what he needs to do instead of making sure that, oh, did I write everything down properly and all of that to satisfy some insurance company or agency or whatever.
Government.
Yeah.
Government's the main cause of this right now.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back and
Yeah.
ask you the meaning of a word.
Right.
Epigenetic.
Epigenetic, it's the cutting edge science of, you know how for what was it, nearly 60 years, the whole holy grail of medical research was decoding the genetic strand. Ever since Watson and Crick discovered it, the whole thing has been, as soon as we get this thing uncoded and we know everything that is involved with it, we're going to have the answer to every disease. We're going to have the answer to anti-aging. We're going to have the answer to immortality, longevity, all of this stuff. Cancer, all of this. And this has really been what the high-end research has been about. Well, they did. They cracked it, nearly 10 years ago now, something like that. And they found out, well, this is the starting point. This is not the answer. And the more research we do on it, the more we find out that the genetic code is really just chemical switches. What turns them on and off is the interesting thing, and that's epigenetics. Genetics is the hand you're dealt by picking your grandparents most effectively.
If you can.
Yeah. And then everything else is what really matters. What really matters is how do you affect those switches. All those switches are there for everybody. Everybody, whether they're on or off, is the big thing.
And how they get turned on is a question, and then if they're turned on,
can they be turned back off?
How do you find out the mechanism of turning them off?
Sure.
And that's why I look at cancer and say cancer is a turned on switch for replicating cells.
Sure.
There's an off switch too.
Yeah.
Got to find that.
Yep.
And then cancers will be done.
Yeah.
History.
Well, I have to say that my grandchildren and great-grandchildren have a good genetic background. Sorry, but that's the way I feel.
No. But you can plot that back.
Oh, I'm sure
if you go through, you might be able to find that in your lineage that your grandparents, great-grandparents, they're living to 80 and 90 years old already.
Well, my parents didn't. Both of my parents died at 70. And that year I was 70, it scared me to death.
Sure.
Because I just knew, okay, both of my parents died when they were 70. Am I going to die now that I'm 70?
Well, there you go. That's epigenetics in a nutshell. Just because you have a genetic trait, a genetic tendency, doesn't mean that it's going to be expressed. And that's what this talk is all about, the 10 top things that you can do in order to stack the odds in your favor, regardless of the hand you've been dealt. And if you've been dealt a good hand and you're still throwing it away with this stuff, the chances are that you're going to screw something up.
No, I'm not.
No, I get it. But what I'm saying is that there are some people who can take a beating a lot better than other people, but, it will eventually catch up.
But sometimes, Barb, there's going to be that on button will be pushed by something you're not aware of.
Sure.
It might be something you eat, something you get exposed to. I mean, look what's going on the other side of the hill here with Porter Ranch. I mean, some people there are going to have a switched on immune problem
Sure.
because of the gas that they've been exposed to. And
Absolutely.
even when it's been for a short period of time. So there's going to be things that you might not even know about, that you might go to a store, Whole Foods or Trader Joe's or one of these places that, it says, hey, we got really healthy food, but, people still don't know about an effect that is out there that might get us. So we have to be wary, and epigenetics is a place where an area of study which needs to be promoted and
Absolutely.
start looking into how we're going to use that.
This Saturday at the Valencia Wellness Center.
If you exercise, you eat well, you get plenty of rest, and try to avoid stress.
Right.
Those are all things in your favor.
Absolutely. Here's the problem with that advice. It's way too general.
Well, that's
What is eating well? What does eating well mean? Eating well to you means something completely different to me, means something completely different to Dr. Dorio, means something completely different to Engineer Justin. So eating well is relative. And
Yes.
exercising is relative, and sleeping is relative. There's a thing in medicine now that is called evidence-based, and that is just compiling big clumps of data and trying to make some sense of it and saying that, okay, this is what the numbers tell us. The problem with that is that may be true across a broad section
Right.
of the population.
Right.
All that matters, is it true for you?
That's right.
Is it
That's right.
appropriate for you? So you can hear this information and say that, well, all the research says that everybody needs at least 7 hours of sleep a night. Well, that may be true for 99% of the population, but if that is not true for you and you follow that advice, you're going to have a problem with it.
Well,
The key in epigenetics is figuring out, start with something, start with some standard to
base,
follow. But really pay attention to whether it's working for you or not working for you. That's the trick.
Well-
Not just going on, oh, well, I heard it on the TV, or, oh, this doctor on the radio told me to do this, or my doctor said that everybody needs to have more calcium or more vitamin D or whatever. And I never push my nutritional beliefs on anybody because I know it's only appropriate
For you.
It's only appropriate for 30% of the population, and I don't know that you're in that group.
Yeah.
Well, that's true.
And
That's true.
statistically going, and it's going to be an aside, but evidence-based, and we do things in treatment that is so-called evidence-based because studies have been done with statistics used to show there's benefit to the majority of people.
majority of people.
And that's what you hope for. The bad part has been, in the past few years, there's been a skewing of so-called evidence-based.
Of
Even
course.
places of higher learning that have produced some of these studies, it's shown that some of them should have been directed by pharmaceutical companies,
Who's paying for the
government.
research?
Yeah, you don't know. And even though I think I know how to read these papers and delve into it and make sure they're legitimate, sometimes they're hiding information. They're
Sure.
taking statistics, falsifying some or taking some out to make it go in the direction they want it to go into, to sell their product sometimes.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, there's no real ramifications for getting caught doing that.
None.
Yeah, they get a smack on the wrist, and
That's
they
it.
get a couple $1 million
How about going to
fine.
jail?
Yeah, a couple
Especially
million.
if people are hurt by
In
the
other
treatment.
countries, people do go to jail for that. I'm not going to say who, but certain pharmaceutical companies knew that they were there was a contaminated product, and moved it from one country where they got caught to another country where they didn't get caught. And when that happened in another country, not in the United States, it didn't happen here, but in a country in Europe, people did wind up going to jail for that, which
I
is
think that's good.
nice, which is the way
Yes.
it should be. Unfortunately, the way our system is set up here, that will never
doesn't.
happen.
No accountability.
That will never
Absolutely none.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
And on that note,
do we need to take a break already?
Yep.
I think we do, don't we? I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host, Dr. Jean Dorio, on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.